We are live.
Hey there. Welcome back to day 10 of our marathon of queer money follow ups. We are working hard to get all of these out there, doing a daily broadcast. So we're super excited to have you with us today. I have a question for you. Do you have money with a former employer's retirement plan that you haven't done anything with? Turns out that a lot of millennials actually have money with a former employer's retirement plan that's just sitting there. And that's what we talked about a little bit on Queer Money episode number 10 with David Rae of Financial Planner LA. And we kind of cracked into this idea of why do so many people have money at a former employer's retirement plan that they haven't done anything with? How does that happen and what you can do about it? So we dove into this topic, starting off with this whole idea of millennials and career. And I know that millennials get a bad rap, right? A lot of millennials get a bad rap about career choices, about motivation, and we're definitely not here to talk about that.
No, but I think we need to acknowledge that, especially since 5 years ago when we had this conversation, millennials are older now. They're not kids.
Right, exactly.
And I feel like a lot of the media talks about them like they've just graduated college yesterday.
Right, yeah.
But they're actually adults working, earning money, contributing to society.
Right. The oldest millennials are up there in their late 30s, possibly even getting close to 40. So, like you said, they're not kids. And there's a lot of life choices that people make in their late 20s, early and mid 30s that have huge consequences towards the rest of their life.
Yeah, and I think what was very profound for the millennial generation was when they did enter the workforce, not only were we overcoming the crash of the 2008 housing market and everything that precipitated after that, but they also were kind of like changing the way that we worked. They were looking for more than just working for a W-2 and earning money and doing what your boss told you. They wanted to work for more esoteric jobs, get more reward out of their everyday work. They didn't want to save their personal satisfaction for evenings and weekends. And so that's part of what this conversation was all about was millennials, when they graduated, they weren't necessarily finding the jobs that they wanted. And so they would do a lot of job hopping.
Yeah.
But then that job hopping can pose some risks, especially if you're with an employer for any significant period of time and had any benefits such as a company-sponsored retirement plan.
Right. It makes me wonder if the reason why they were doing this is because they saw their parents or maybe their grandparents who had been in companies for a long period of time, thought that they had these secure jobs and were kind of maybe putting up with the environment that they were working in because they thought that they had a secure job. And then all of a sudden 2008 comes along and they're like, oh shit, this is not a reality, that these aren't secure. There is no such thing as a secure job, right? So they're like, well, then I'm going to go out and I'm going to get a job that actually feeds my soul. And that's possibly why they started bouncing around more than we did.
But that does pose a problem, and it's actually a question we've gotten in the Queer Money Facebook group several times. What is a 401k or a company-sponsored retirement plan? And what do I do with my company-sponsored retirement plan once I've left a job? So we actually did a poll in the Queer Money Facebook group not too long ago, and 49% of respondents to that poll said they still had money left at a company-sponsored retirement plan at a former job that they haven't done anything with.
Right.
And one of the questions was, well, what do I do with that?
Right.
And so we're going to talk about actually that particular topic on episode 248 of the Queer Money podcast that's coming out February 9th, 2021.
Yeah, and I think it's also a very timely topic for right now. You know, a lot of folks, especially when you look at the LGBT community and a lot of folks who are working in service and various industries that have either been furloughed or been laid off because of COVID, they may have now moved on to another job. Let's hope that they've moved on to another job, and because that they may have left an employer-sponsored retirement plan behind. What was interesting is when we started talking about this whole subject of of job hopping with David Rae, he brought up a really good point, and that was to be careful when you're doing the job hopping. There's a lot of things that go into play here. He had a really good quote, which I like. He basically said, if you're going to job hop, make sure that you're not leaving on day 364 versus day 365 and leaving behind money. And what was interesting about this whole idea or this conversation about job hopping or moving from one employer to another, and it doesn't have to necessarily be job hopping. Maybe you were with a company for 2, 3, 4 years, but you're moving to another employer. You want to check things like your vesting schedule with your 401k plan to see if staying just another week or month would allow you to go from maybe a 20% to a 40% vesting of the amount of money that your company put into the account for you. Or if you're close to the eligibility for a bonus, you want to make sure that you're looking at those things. I know that moving to another job is great, but
be strategic.
Yeah, exactly. You could be moving to another job because it's going to pay you $5,000 more a year, but you're leaving behind $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 because you're leaving your current employer.
And I think it's great that people, what this suggests is that people are taking advantage of the retirement savings options that are available to them, and that's great. You definitely want to start that as soon as you possibly can. Ideally, as soon as you get into you start your career, start saving money, because time in the market is better than significantly better than timing the market. But you definitely want to do that strategically, the transition of a job, whether you're job hopping or actually doing a strategic move. You want to actually leave strategically so you don't leave money on the table. But then you also want to make sure you kind of clean up house before you finally cut every and all ties and forget about your former employer. So, what do you do if you do have a company-sponsored retirement plan left at a former employer? Well, we've got 3 steps that we can share with you.
Yeah, so the first thing is you want to contact a financial services firm and tell them that you want to open up an IRA rollover account. That basically is an account that allows you to move the money from your employer's retirement account to one that you can manage yourself. Then you want to go back to your employer. Typically, you go to the HR department and you say, hey, I'm going to initiate this rollover. And they will send you some paperwork. You fill that paperwork out with the information you got from the company that you opened up this new account with. And then they will either send the money directly to the new company, the new brokerage account, or they will send a check to you, which you then immediately need to turn around and send on to that company. Now, once that has happened and that money is in that account, one really important thing, you have to make sure that you invest that money. You don't want to have that sitting in cash, because if it's sitting in cash, it isn't growing, and retirement accounts have to grow so that you can afford to have a retirement.
And that's another mistake a lot of people make. Not only do they leave money at an old company that they forget about and then never take advantage of, but very often people will leave money either in a 401k or they'll roll it over into an IRA rollover account, and they'll just leave it in the account in cash or in a money market position. And very often, and that's not earning them a whole lot. So they're losing a whole lot of time in the market that they could be getting a better return. We go ahead and download the Queer Money podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, because you don't want to miss episode 248 when we talk more about these 3 steps and give you all the details of what you need to know to initiate that rollover.
Yeah, and I will say one of the things that was interesting we talked about on this particular episode is this idea of a financial hangover from investing. When you're young, you have to invest less money to get the same kind of retirement if you wait until you're older. And so spread that hangover over a long period of time. We all hate hangovers, right? Especially when they're really bad that first morning. Well, you can not have that kind of investment hangover by making sure you spread out your investing.
So thank you for joining us for another Queer Money follow-up. Here's your Queer Money follow-up from this episode. Let us know in the comments section below if you have any money left at a former plan that you had with a former employer. We'd like to know your thoughts. And then look out for episode 248 of the Queer Money podcast coming out in a couple weeks. Thank you, and we will talk to you tomorrow.